friends, hello to all. Today I will tell you the story of a prisoner of war whom the Vietnamese called an idiot or just an incredible dumbass, considering him the stupidest prisoner. We will talk about the American sailor Douglas Hegdahl. Hegdahl was a native of South Dakota and served on the USS Canberra. During the Vietnam War, on April 6, 1967, the cruiser was in Gulf of Tonkin and fired its guns at land, providing fire support. At about 3:30 a.m., Douglas woke up to take up his shift. Despite the inclement weather, the open sea, and the roaring salvos of the guns, he went out on deck. And everything would have been fine, but during firing, sailors were forbidden to go out on the upper deck as there was a risk of falling overboard. Which is exactly what happened to the careless sailor. Luckily for Hegdahl, he quickly got his bearings and tried to reach land. Douglas was floating at sea for a long time until he was finally picked up by either Vietnamese or Cambodian fishermen who handed him over to the North Vietnamese. They, of course, gave him a warm welcome, mistaking the sailor for an American spy. But Douglas's fellow sailors did not report him missing for 2 days. Eventually, he was declared dead and the crew held a memorial service. During this time, Douglas was transported to the notorious prison known as the Hanoi Hilton. There too, they did not believe his story about being thrown overboard. When Douglas was asked to write anti-war statements against the United States, he agreed, which greatly surprised the Vietnamese, who were already preparing for torture. In fact, Douglas quickly realized that the American officers who wrote the propaganda pamphlets were most likely forced to do so by force, and no sane American would voluntarily write such nonsense. Therefore, Douglas decided that the best thing he could do was to pretend to be an idiot and follow the lead of the Vietnamese. He said that before serving in the Navy, he was a poor peasant, and when he was assigned to write leaflets, he pretended that he could neither read nor write. The Vietnamese decided to teach him to read and write, but Douglas was so openly and persistently dumb that they had to abandon this idea. As a result, Hegdahl received the nickname Incredible Stupid, and due to his apparent stupidity, he was given almost complete freedom of action within the camp. During his stay in Hanoi Hilton, Douglas was mainly engaged in cleaning the territory. He was placed in a cell with an Air Force officer, Joe Kraka, who suggested that he use one technique. Using the children's rhyme, Old MacDonald Had a Farm, Douglas remembered the names of 256 prisoners of war as well as the dates of their capture, arrival at the camp, and other information. Well, Douglas did not waste time during the cleaning. He filled the gas tanks of 5 trucks with leaves and dirt, passed messages and notes between prisoners, and collected information. One day, he told the Vietnamese that he needed new glasses. And after he was taken to the city for a fitting, he memorized the way back to the prison. Later, he was transferred to a cell with Richard Stratton. An agreement was made among the American prisoners of war that none of them would agree to early release. But when the Vietnamese agreed to such an agreement, Stratton ordered Hegdahl to agree to early release and tell what was happening in the Hanoi Hilton. The released sailor, during the Paris peace treaties, accused the Vietnamese of cruel treatment of prisoners of war. The story prompted Vietnam to soften the conditions of detention in the camp. Also, Hegdahl named all the prisoners of war whom he remembered, some of whom were presumed dead. So many of the prisoners of the Hanoi Hilton were saved thanks to the efforts of Hegdahl, who managed to outwit the Vietnamese.